Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this morning after the national championship game. UConn 76, San Diego State 59. Got a great panel of highly intelligent humans on the show this morning. Coach Matt Dean checks in from over in Memphis, Rhodes College, and Frank Duffy, whereabouts unknown, kind of like Daniel Simpson Day has no grade point average. Daniel Simpson Day, all classes incomplete. Frank is somewhere checking in live here on the Tuesday edition of Sidelines. We'll be with you for the next 2 hours, talking a lot of college football, basketball, baseball, recruiting. It is all happening. Just to remind you, the First Amendment, free speech, is alive and well here on Sidelines. We don't hold back. We're not worried about hurting your feelings. We're here to get the truth out. And we'll be joined in the second segment. Doug Dean, AU Dose in Birmingham, will check in. And Coach John Brady will check in at the top of hour number 2. Still in Palm Springs on a research project out there. Must be some high-level security out there, but he was there last week too, so that's a good place to be doing high-level research. Can't wait to get his thoughts on all that is happening in the college basketball world. Hey, we're here with you 6 days a week. Don't forget that, www.sidelines.live. You miss us live. Remember, you can sync it on your iPhone, on your laptop, desktop, anywhere, Tommy boy, that you want to listen. You can hear us. Very simple. If you miss us live, the show is put up right there on YouTube and our sidelines.live website. Go there and listen and follow us. Frank Duffy, Matt Dean, let's get going, guys. Coach Matt Dean, I'll go with you first. I'll tell you one thing. The sportsmanship after the game was first class. Unlike the day before in the LSU-Iowa game with everybody doing all this crap. Look, I know people get excited and have fun, and I don't know what was going on between those girls in that game, but those men acted like true gentlemen. I was so impressed. That was a good game, too. Good, clean game. Look, you can do the post-mortem, the autopsy, and say that fouls should have been called here or there, but UConn was just flat out the better team, 76-59. Is that how you see it, the man from Davenport?
Yeah, they were dominant. I think we kind of thought that going into the championship game, but I will give San Diego State a lot of credit. Frank, I don't know what you thought, but when they cut it to 60-55 with about 5.5 to play, I'm like, hey, they're a couple more stops away from making this a really interesting run. And then Jordan Hawkins comes off a triple screen, curls to the top of the key, buries a dagger 3. And then the young man, Adama Sonomo, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, the big center inside for the Huskies. You just couldn't keep him off the glass. And I think he was 17-10. I don't think we thought going into this tournament, at least I didn't, that there was a dominant team. But my God, there was. They were the first team to average all 6 wins above 13 points a game.
Yeah.
And, Frank, I didn't see this coming because everyone had talked about them. They had a great start, but, they lost. Was it 5 of 6 or 6 of 7 in conference play in the middle of the season? Then they finished the season 12-1, so they are very
well. In that second round game, they barely got out. So you normally will have a game like that. But once they won that game, once they got into the Sweet 16, they were the cream of the crop. They really were. And going into this was a wide open field, and it proved out, right? I mean, look at all the high seeds that were, much further down the line, right? I do think that the men's game and the women's game are really kind of bridging the gap. The athleticism. I didn't get to watch the LSU women's national championship game. I listened to it on the radio. We were coming back from Florida in our RV, and I listened to it on Sirius. athleticism that the women portrayed, and then the class of the men. Yeah, the Angel Reese thing was a little much. I agree. She shouldn't have followed her around the court. She went too far with it. I do think that Caitlin Clark got a little taste of her own medicine. I mean, she kind of was doing that as well. So I think it kind of evens out in the wash. But yes, I think the men were far more, shall we say, dignified in the process. It was really interesting listening to the last broadcast.
Nance. Yeah.
Nance is going to be hard to beat. He really is. What a legacy. Over 25 years, right? I mean, I think that was the number that they've been saying, maybe even closer to 30.
Yeah.
So, I think the game of basketball is in a healthy place. Women's probably more so than ever. But the game of basketball, especially on the men's side, the ability that, you can get on a 6-game run. I mean, the Aztecs, you're right, Matt, they were covering. 5 minutes to go, they were covering. And when you can say I'm 5 minutes away and I was within the Vegas line, and I'm a Cinderella, that proves anything can happen. And that's going to transfer over into baseball and all these spring sports. It's a fabulous time for collegiate sports right now. It really is.
It is. And you know what? I thought that men's game was really, really good. But the last with 5 minutes, San Diego State gets it to within 5. You can make up for all those missed threes, those bricks they were throwing up in the first half. But UConn, when they were in the Big East, they had that 5-game losing streak. People wrote them off. They thought, oh, well, they're done. But that's a tough league. Now the question is, what was the toughest league in the regular season? Big 12 or the Big East? It wasn't the SEC. The SEC wasn't. SEC. So wait, I'm sorry, but the SEC is overrated.
Rob, the Big East showed out, man.
Holy they did
in this tournament. They showed out.
Yeah, there's no question. And the problem is with the SEC, I think you've got so many rosters with these studs that come in that are going to be a one and done, not entire rosters, but that hurts you. The more you climb the ladder, don't you think, Matt, as you climb that ladder in the tournament, that level of or lack of experience really starts to show up.
Yeah, I agree with Frank. The Big East, let's not forget Creighton was a hand check call away from overtime against San Diego State. Big East was real close to having 2 in the Final Four. A lot of people thought that Creighton, I think Frank, Creighton beat UConn in the regular season because they probably split home and home in their conference.
Yeah.
But I think it does show out because I do think, if you look at the Alabama-San Diego State game now, obviously Alabama's got the future draft picks, the more talented roster, but it matters. I mean, age matters. I mean, the fact that San Diego State had more experienced players, their style of play, their physicality, their ability to guard Alabama like any other team has. And I will tell you this, I think moving forward, we're going to see the Big East stay pretty healthy because of what you said. I mean, historically, I think we all remember the days with Patrick Ewing, Chris Mullen, the great Rollo Massimino team, Walter Berry.
Nova, St. John's.
Yeah, all those teams.
Georgetown.
Seton Hall.
Remember when ESPN started going, it was always that Big East Monday.
Big Monday.
Yeah. That's right. And
Big Monday.
I think the Big East is going to be the best basketball conference next year unless there's a transformation of talent that we're not seeing coming. But it's funny. I don't know if you guys feel this way. I follow Twitter a lot. It's kind of like my newspaper. Yeah. As soon as a team is eliminated now, to kind of acquiesce the fan base, all you see on Twitter for them is who they're recruiting in the portal. It's like, okay, we lost, but here's what we're doing next year to rebuild already. I mean, I even heard San Diego
the body's not cold yet.
It's not, Frank, and it's really it's almost like free agency in a professional team. And I think teams are now getting a jump start when they lose. They're going into the portal, and it's just a new way of life, I think, in basketball. Football's a little different too because, guys, you need a couple years in the weight room to become a better football player, physicality-wise. Sometimes, unless you're, let's say, a skill guy or quarterback. I just think in basketball, man, you are just instantaneously. I talked to one of my former assistants last night, and she had been eliminated from the tournament, and that's the only thing we were talking about is, hey, who are you bringing in? I mean, that's and now you mentioned the lead, Rob. What are we going to be talking about later? Probably Frank gave us an update on LSU football recruit. I mean, that's all we're doing. We're moving from one to the next, and now it's almost like, well, it's time for SEC football.
Well, Frank and Matt, what we remember is that big Monday. Remember ESPN, how they cornered the market? I remember the late 80s, early 90s, the Big East, Big 12, but the Big East. And look, we're all Southerners. Matt, you're from the Midwest, but Madison Square Garden, the Big East, that did so much for college basketball and interest. That was Patrick Ewing and Chris Mullins at St. John's, Lou Carnesecca, Raleigh Massimino at Villanova, PJ Carlesimo at Seton Hall. You just go down the list of the schools, and that's what's so cool about basketball. You don't have to have a big roster. It takes just a small group of guys, and you can go on a hell of a run. But you remember what happened to the Big East, though? Raleigh Massimino, they all got so commercialized with endorsements and commercials. Remember when Raleigh left Villanova and went to Las Vegas? Didn't he go to UNLV? It was never the same once they started getting away. Don't forget what it took to get there, and then don't quit doing what works. That's what seems to happen over and over, because let's face it, they all got paid a lot of money and they abandoned whatever core principles they had, and they left, and the Big East collapsed. And now it's coming back. Maybe they learned a lesson.
Well, it was such a New York blacktop playground sort of league, right? And you had these incredible guards. We talked about that on one of the shows a show or two ago. But I remember, Rob, in 1982, 83, being in college, and I remember coming back at 8 o'clock on a Monday night to watch Georgetown play Syracuse. And I'll remember it like it was yesterday. And they used to do kind of double headers, if you remember. They would have like the early game, like at 6, which was 7 Eastern. I was in Central Time. And then you come back with the 9 o'clock Eastern game, the second game. That was incredible basketball. You had just these behemoths, and when Villanova beat Georgetown in '85, the upset of all upsets. Goliath is taken down by David. It was really cemented, and you thought that was something like that was going to last forever. You also thought that the ACC was going to remain a behemoth as well. And you never thought you'd see a North Carolina in a championship game one year and then totally whiff and miss the turn of the other man. I'm telling you, it's totally wide open. But I will say, the Big East basketball this year, in this environment we find ourselves, where conferences all of a sudden look up one day and realize, oh my gosh, the moving vans are coming and taking the stuff and moving them out. That might have been a big thing for the Big East, for their conference livelihood, is how well they played in basketball this year.
Yeah, and Matt, when UConn left and was in the league with Memphis and all, they just weren't the same. Those schools, but Creighton's in the Big East, Xavier's in the Big East, so they went outside of their traditional geographic footprint. But Frank's right, you're right. The hard top New York City, that mentality, and Jay Wright, and we need to get him back in coaching, but he is great as an analyst. Talks about those New York City guards just playing on the streets. It's a way of playing. It's like getting great wide receivers out of Florida that on the track and field. Basketball, look at the guards that come south from New York City, guys. They do well. They do well wherever they go, because they make everybody else work harder. I think that's what it boils down to. In the Big East, this is great for college basketball. Like, I wish the SEC had won the national championship, but we don't play that style of basketball that they play at UConn. They are, and Villanova, those schools, it's fun to watch.
And another thing, and Frank, I didn't realize this till last night. They kept flashing PJ Carlesimo in the TV screen, and I forgot that he was Danny Hurley's college coach at Seton Hall. you look at the storylines with Bobby Hurley, his brother, Bobby Hurley Sr., one of the greatest coaches of all time in St. Anthony's up in New Jersey. That family pedigree in coaching and playing is really special. And, he even referenced it in talking at the end about being a Jersey City guy. And this is how we go. And you could tell the 5th title for that program meant a lot to the fan base. It meant a lot to the players. It meant a lot to the staff. And when you think about it, 5 national titles in basketball, it puts you up there with I guess you're now more of a blue blood than ever before.
It puts you up there with their women program.
That's right. Well, they got 11, Frank. Oriana has 11.
Yeah.
And I know I'm aging every day, but Gino, I've watched him on the sidelines the last couple of years. I think COVID kind of hit certain programs really hard. Gino's aged more in the last couple of years than I've seen him. I hope his health is fine because I think he's still got another run or two left to get another title. His really good player, Paige Buchers, got hurt again. So hopefully he'll get them back.
And don't think that there's not some rivalry between those men's and women's programs. Let me tell you, Coach Brady's coming on a little bit later. I wish I could stay on. I've got a meeting I got to go to. I wish I could stay on with him. But let me tell you, the women at LSU winning a national championship before the men have gotten into a championship game. And Coach Brady had a great run in 06. Very possibly could have won it all in 06 with Big Baby and Tyrus Thomas and that team. So there's a sibling rivalry that's going on in these universities between these men's and women's programs. And the women's program right now is unlike it's ever been.
Hold those thoughts, guys. We're going to come back and get into that. Frank Duffy, Matt Dean, Sidelines, post-national championship, right after this.
Hey, y'all. It's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Yeah, because they're going to take.
Okay, Rob Browne here with you. We are back with Doug Dean, Matt Dean,
Doug's cousin.
and cousin Matt, and Frank Duffy. And look, Doug will be joining us here in a few minutes. He's running a few minutes behind. I think he's having an issue with his ticket at the Greyhound station.
The two famous Dean boys since Duffy and Dizzy.
Yes, sir.
My dad loved those guys.
I know they did, but Midwestern guys. The Gas House gang.
Yes, the Gas House gang.
That's right.
And,
speaking of that, hey, Matt, I'm bringing up Bengal 1 back up to Forest City, Iowa on Saturday for my last bit of warranty work up there at the mothership. Winnebago is just fabulous.
Yeah.
They are such an incredible company. They take care of everything on that under warranty. And it was supposed to run out in January, but because of an ice storm in November, I couldn't make it up there. They were saying, "Come on up, we'll take care of it for you."
That's incredible.
They're great people. I love Iowa people. They are some of the friendliest people on this planet.
We first started pheasant hunting, Matt, Mount Ayr, Iowa, south of Des Moines.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of my favorite terms, we had one of our guides that was with us, Jake. We were in Mount Air, which is below Des Moines, probably 35 miles. And Jake would always say, "Oh, don't you know, there's a bird or two out there." And we went in the switchgrass up there. It's 8 and 10 foot tall stuff. And you'd have that stare in your eyes chasing pheasants all day long. But people up there are awesome. But Des Moines is the capital, obviously, of Iowa. But, Matt knows what it's known for. Frank, if you don't, you're going to find out when you go through Des Moines here Saturday. It is the pork chop capital of the world. Some cities are known as great steakhouse cities like Memphis and Chicago. Mm-hmm. And Des Moines has the best pork chops. Matt, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still a product of that food group, right? And quite frankly, we're also known for our corn. We do that pretty well. We don't play tackle football great, but we're always in a bowl game. But we got some other problems. But that's a cool story about the Winnebago, Frank. I like that.
Yep. And the funny thing is, and I won't bore you all with this. This is like my 10th trip to Iowa. Our kids were in Odyssey of the Mind, and the World Championships are in Ames, Iowa, at Iowa State University. And we were there twice within like a 4-year period that the kids were in this particular competition. And I mean, I'm telling you, Iowa is like my second home with this RV. We go up there all the time, but we love it. It's just friendly.
I mean, they don't have an RV center like in Atlanta?
Well, they do, but this is the factory. So nobody works on an RV like the guys that built it. This is a rolling house, and think of all the problems you have with your own house. And now put it on 6 wheels, torque it down the road. Have all your drunk buddies come over to the LSU Alabama game when you tailgate, stumbling, bumbling, knocking into stuff. Things break very easily on these. So I'm going back to Iowa for them to fix it one last time. After the warranty runs out, I go 20 miles up the road.
And just hope that guy knows what he's doing.
That's right. I hope Cleet has it down. I hope he's figured it out.
Hey, Frank, we got to now ask you about that national championship game on Sunday with the women. Look, that was great for LSU, but what would after the game, the sportsmanship? Apparently, during the game, I was watching it. I get so sick of hearing this. You disrespected me. Get over yourself, okay?
Yeah.
LSU won in convincing fashion. Iowa's tough. They beat South Carolina, but
you beat South Carolina in women's basketball. You've done something.
Exactly. And I don't like it when these coaches try to transcend and become bigger than the game and politicize everything. Shut up, okay? Shut up and dribble. I mean, I don't want to hear you, okay? Well, and LSU won the game, but I don't know what everybody's talking about, and they'll get over it. But
that was self-inflicted. LSU's fault. LSU would have been far better off to get into the end zone, put the football on the bottom of the end zone like I've been there before, because the talk would have been about how they scored 102 friggin' points.
Exactly. I know.
We've buried the lead because of just some selfishness.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this, and again, in all honesty, I was driving my RV back from Cape San Blas down in Florida, and I was lucky to get serious with satellite because there's no coverage in between lower Alabama, northern Florida coming up. There's no interstate coming back to Atlanta. So I was at the sticks. So I didn't see it. But that makes an interesting part because I didn't see it. There was absolutely no knowledge of mine that there was chippiness or cheapness going on. So I never knew any of this. In fact, I didn't even know that hell broke out until I got back home at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night and got on, YouTube and I got on Twitter to find out what happened. I had no clue about it. Right. Yeah. So I think LSU made the mistake of when you get to the end zone, pretend like you've been there before, even if you haven't.
Yeah.
So she went too far. I agree. I think there's some piling on. Because I think Caitlin Clark, she's a trash talker too. She's another one that gives it. Sometimes it's cool to give the bully a little taste of their own medicine a little bit. But I think Angel Reese went way too far, and it took the message off of what is an incredible season. And to Matt's point about hitting the ground running, that team was manufactured. That was an NIL team.
Yeah.
That was a team that was brought in because Kim Mulkey is one hell of a coach. And she said, I'm deficient here, 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 and here. And she should know. I mean, look at her pedigree. And she filled those holes, and that team went out and performed. And also to Matt's point, unlike football, where, and to Rob, your point as well, talking about how football teams are designed, and you've said it 4 years that I've been on here, there's an element more of teamwork that's needed in football, offensive line work, getting them into the weight room. There's a lot of more of a ramping up. Basketball really is a talent-driven sport, and if you can cobble them together, well, if you can get talent on NIL and you can get talent in the transfer portal and you can pull it in that way, you just saw how you can win a national championship in basketball on the women's side.
Yeah,
and don't think for a minute the men wasn't looking.
That's right.
Sure. And you know what? I mean, hell, LSU was so dominant. Frank, that's exactly what needed to be said. Yeah, they buried the lead. They won the game. Look, there's always going to be stuff going on with players, but I guess what I'm trying to say is people got on Twitter. You know, I mean, the thing that I saw that really stuck out was the First Lady, Jill Biden, saying, I was at the game, and I think Iowa should be invited to the White House with LSU. And my reply was,
No,
you have to win the national championship to be invited to the White House. Iowa needs to go win the national championship next year. I said, sorry, no participation trophies.
Correct. That's exactly what that was, the giant participation trophy from the woke whack left. And I don't want to get political about it, but that's what the hell's wrong. It's not based on merit. It's based on feel good. And that's what has us with the Chinese and the Russians sitting off of our friggin' coast.
Yeah. We can't, you just can't have that. I mean, that's like not keeping score. Look, Iowa's going to be back next year, and we're going to get to Matt here next about that. That's a good, and you know what? Look, for those players on LSU, everybody got emotional. They got jacked up. We all say some crazy stuff right at the end of a game. I guess what I like, but this is they'll move on from it. But I can't remember ever 2 days, 3 days after a women's national championship in basketball, mission accomplished. They've got people talking about it, Matt. And I guess our expectations of what we expect from men and women are different. I got 2 boys. I got 2 girls. I don't want my girls playing football. They're past college anyway. But I thought that game was incredible. The Final Four was incredible. And let the free market decide, but to go to Washington, to the White House, you got to win the national championship. Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. Okay. There are no discounts in parachutes, brain surgery, fire extinguishers, or life insurance. Let's take it now to Matt Dean and let him weigh in, because Matt, you've coached women 16 years. You coached men as well. I know you're a high character guy. You wouldn't put up with that from anybody.
No, Frank hit it on the head. I mean, you play so well. You set a record for the most points scored in a national championship game, right? I mean, I was just amazed the whole game because, Iowa plays different defensively, Frank, because they may not be as athletic. They'll play a little triangle and 2. They'll make some of your people shoot the ball from the perimeter, and both teams, I'm talking about South Carolina and LSU, has superior players inside, very long, very tough to rebound against.
Athletic,
Yeah. And, so I was watching that game, and I was at the end of the game when she kind of walked off the court doing that to Caitlin. I told Rob yesterday that part didn't bother me as much as the post-game stuff on ESPN, another station that has got political motives, right?
Correct.
And so at the end of the game, Angel Reese, who's a marvelous player, was talking about how Iowa disrespected LSU, referring to how they played South Carolina, their SEC comrades, right? And I'm like, Rob, Iowa did LSU a favor because they didn't want to play South Carolina again.
That's right.
I mean, they lost to South Carolina 88-64 in the regular season.
Right.
They weren't going to beat South Carolina, Frank. I'm here to tell you.
I think that was justification, man.
Yeah.
I think that's when the kid gets caught and they're coming up with an explanation,
That's
and
right.
it doesn't pass the parent smell test. In fact, in most cases, trying to justify it makes it stinkier than the actual act itself.
It does. I would much rather say, hey, I'm not going to talk about that. That was for stuff that happened on the floor. Let's talk about LSU basketball, right? And but going back, another thing that we're missing here, and I think, Rob, you touched on this. I think there was 9.9 million viewers for this game.
Wow.
I think it's more than the Sugar or the Orange Bowl. I think
it was crazy.
So we're talking about women's basketball, a game that was played. Another thing I didn't understand, Frank, you got an elite game. Why are you playing 2:30 in the afternoon on Sunday?
Yeah.
Can we not get prime time?
I would have loved to have been, maybe not the ridiculous 9:20 start.
But how about 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock?
But a nice 7 o'clock start would have been absolutely perfect. I don't know.
I don't understand. Maybe contractually they were.
Because of baseball. Because of baseball.
Okay, you're right.
Baseball.
That's right.
Probably. Because of that being opening night of ESPN's Major League Baseball coverage. That's
God forbid we can't make that a Monday deal, right? So. But now maybe because of what's happened, you'll see that game in the future being played at 6, 7 o'clock, whatever.
The athleticism on the women's side was unlike I'd ever seen. I mean, frankly, I'll just be honest with you. I always thought watching women's basketball was as boring as watching, maple syrup come out of trees, honest to God. And the last 2 months of this season, and of course my interest was LSU, great player, Angel Reese, caught a couple of games. I didn't watch a lot of them. But once they got into the Sweet 16, I watched, and I'm telling you what, that was compelling basketball.
Yeah, but the long-lasting effect of women's basketball. When I was at Auburn, Mayola and Ruthie Bolton were on that team with Joe Champy, and the mighty Ruthie is a great ESPN 30 for 30 that they did, and they went into the Olympics and all. And Joe Champy, just one of my favorite coaches of ever. He used to come over to the Channel 3 newsroom on Sunday afternoons and do his coach's show. And he being Italian Catholic from Philadelphia, would always bring a huge basket of hot, fresh Italian food that his wife and him had made. Nobody makes better stromboli than Joe Champy. And God, the strategy, Matt, and the pure game, the X's and how plays are run. And Matt, you as a coach can appreciate it more than 100 times. But Frank's right, and you're right. It's great. Let the free market decide. What I think happened was they didn't try to shame people into watching it. Let people watch it on their own. And the free market, anytime that the government tries to do something, they could screw up a 2-car funeral. Let the free market decide. Women's basketball, I didn't think about it being women's or men's. I thought that was a hell of a game.
Yeah.
I'm going to watch it. I don't look at everything through this identity stuff. It's like, that was a damn good game, and y'all are right. Put it on prime time and try that. You think those numbers were good at almost 10 million, 2:30 in the afternoon when most people are taking a Sunday nap, sleeping off a hangover? Yeah. Wait till you get it on prime time. And I'm sure they've done it before, but I bet you they'll get the message to listen to the fans and quit trying to proselytize.
Well, and they already had empirical data on this. Now, yes, a lot of this was Kim Mulkey coming back to LSU to Louisiana, even though she played at Louisiana Tech, technically. No pun. But her coming back. But I heard this on the Sirius radio broadcast, so I don't know if they mentioned it on TV. LSU's revenue from parking, concessions, and I think there was another calibration. It might have been ticket sales, but might not have been. I doubt that it was ticket sales, but went from 250,000 2 years ago before Kim got to LSU. And this year it was over 2.5 million. It was tenfold what the program brought in for self-sustenance. Now, again, I know it's a hometown girl coming in. She's had 3 national championships. Hope springs eternal. But I also think it speaks to the women's game as well. I mean, look, let's face it. We're talking 20 minutes on a sports show about women's basketball organically.
Yeah.
I mean, Rob, you don't send out a show sheet. We're sitting here waxing poetically on women's basketball that 5 years ago you'd have put a gun to both Matt and I's heads, and we'd have run. We'd have turned off.
Matt coached women for 16 years.
And even Matt would have probably turned off the TV, or turned off the phone. That's my point. It's crazy. But that's also speaking, Rob and Matt, to the health of spring collegiate sports.
Yes.
I don't think they've ever been as strong with baseball, basketball, indoor track, outdoor track. It's a tennis. It's a fabulous time for collegiate sports because the athletes are getting bigger, stronger, better, more athletic across the entire gamut.
We can rebuild him. We can make him bigger, faster, stronger. Steve Austin, the $6 million man. We're doing it with the spring
No
sport.
steroids.
I'm with, hey, Matt, when we come back, we're going to put the ball in your hands and let you wax poetically, wax eloquently as you do about the women's game and maybe what is happening right after this quick
I got to run.
commercial
See you,
break.
boys.
See you for.
Hi, I'm Eleanor Maynard, a fourth-generation residential broker with Hobson Realtors. Inventory is still a record low in Memphis, and the demand for more supply is continuing to spread across the Mid-South. Rates are starting to stabilize, which means the number of buyers is picking up daily. If you are interested in taking advantage of today's market, please give me, Eleanor Maynard, your Sidelines Live residential specialist, a call today, and let's discuss your needs. 901-761-1622 or directly on my mobile, 901-219-1905. That's 219-1905.
I tell you what, Eleanor Maynard, Hobson Realty, it is spring, great time to be moving. I know everybody loves a good move, especially cross country, but you got to do it. You need to do it right. Call Eleanor Maynard at Hobson Realty because she is with her partner, Mother Betsy Kelly. They're third generation Hobson Realtors in Memphis. Knowing that market, buying or selling a house, it takes a lot. Make that call and it'll be a lot easier. If you're living out of town, you're listening. Hey, I just got transferred. I'm getting relocated to work for AutoZone or FedEx or City of Memphis, whatever. You need to buy a house. You got to sell your house where you are. You got to buy a house in Memphis. Get Eleanor Maynard on your side. She's fantastic. Got a great team. They'll make your life in the transition a lot easier. Matt, I know Frank had to go. And Doug Dean will be on here with us in just a minute. And then Coach John Brady is going to be on from he's out in Palm Springs still. This game last night and the women's game we're talking about on Sunday. Look, I'm sure I don't want to, the people are going to talk during games and all. I think it's the fact that, social media has run with it and tried to make and politicize everything. It's people talking smack. And I think all I was mad about was I just want to see a handshake and sportsmanship after the game. That's what I want to see instead of trying to make it about you. And, I don't like that part about it. And Frank's right. If they'd just handed the ball, to the ref in the end zone like they've been there before, Kim Mulkey has won now 4 national championships. But bottom line, it's gotten people talking about the women's game. I think going forward, Kim Mulkey, I don't know. I don't know her. But those players, don't make it about you. Make it about the team. Okay? That's all I can say.
Rob, I thought about this since we last spoke about this. And the one thing you can't argue, though, too, it's kind of like what Frank said. We're still talking about it 2 days later. Yeah. And that part's got to be good for the women's game. I mean, I think off the court, those young ladies are fine. I think they'll never admit it, but they'll probably reflect and say, if I'm in this situation again, can I handle it differently? Right. I will say something that's incredible what Frank just told us. You're telling me the whole yearly receipts, tickets, parking revenue at LSU for women's basketball went from $250K to $2.5 million. That Kim Mulkey effect, that is absolutely incredible. And you know, the great thing about Coach Mulkey is, you know, you need that personality on the sideline too to grow the game. I know, you know, we talk sometimes about some of the things that may get directed her way because of some of her outfits and some of her on-court demeanor. But you can't argue this, man. She's a legendary coach. She's got 4 national championships. She's 4-0 in title games. She won a national championship as a player, I believe. She played for the legendary Leon Barmore at Louisiana Tech. I think she won a championship as an assistant. I mean, she's up there. She's one of the Mount Rushmore women's basketball coaches we have. So you look at the SEC, you know, Dawn Staley has had a lot of success, tremendous coach. So to get through the SEC in women's basketball is a chore. And it wouldn't shock me again next year. Like, the only thing that shocked me, I mean, I got to tell you, when Iowa beat South Carolina, Rob, South Carolina had won 42 straight games.
Yeah.
And South Carolina with Elia Boston, who was arguably, you know, the best player in the country again, next to Caitlin Clark of Iowa, that win was so big, Vegas bumped, you know, Iowa to a 3-point favorite over LSU and the title game. And I think that's where some of this stuff came from, this lack of respect stuff. But I'll give LSU a lot of credit on the floor. I mean, you score 102 points, man, Rob, you got to make shots. 102 points is a lot of points in a 40-minute game. And they're really good inside. Coach Mulkey does a really good job, obviously, of getting her team prepared to play. Yeah. I even thought after her win against Virginia Tech, in her presser, she said all the things. You know, you could tell she was setting a team up. She was praising Iowa. She was like, I couldn't take my eyes off of Caitlin Clark. And I've been there. And then in the locker room, you're like, okay, we're gonna go shock the world. And they did. I don't think they shocked the world. They didn't shock me. I mean, I thought LSU was going to win the game prior to the game personally. That was just me, because I think to think about this, Rob, to beat South Carolina and LSU in less than 48 hours on the women's side, that's a tall task. I mean, yeah, it's a really tall task.
Yeah. Well, it is. And Doug Dean's on here with us right now, the dueling banjos. I just love the fact that the game, I mean, Kim Mulkey in year 2 wins the national championship. And, you know, Jimmy Ott down in Baton Rouge, who's on with us a lot, the Ott father, he's talked about her a lot. I look at just how quickly she did it. Now, NIL, the transfer portal, here's where we're deficient. We've got to bring in this player and that player at this position. And she did it. That's getting the job done. And that's what you pay a coach to do. I just love to see a coach that has a system and watch that system come to fruition in terms of success. That was a lot of fun. And again, that whole Iowa team is coming back next year, aren't they?
I think, except for the big post player, I think everyone will be back if they use their option. And Caitlin Clark is not draft eligible yet, you know, the WNBA, so she'll obviously be back. But, you know, one of the things, too, with Coach Mulkey, I think you got to give her a lot of credit for is, you know, we talk about these teams that are kind of put together and constructed in 2 years. Yeah. But she made all the right decisions on personnel, right? Yeah. Every decision she made turned out really, really well for their program. The pieces fell into place, and then she coached the heck out of it. That's what she does.
He really did, and it's not everybody can do that. Doug Dean down in Birmingham joined us. We've been talking about the men's national championship, the women's national championship. Frank Duffy was with us. Had to get off to go to a meeting, but jump in here because it's the day after, man. And basketball, it's been so intense, and all of a sudden they just pull the brakes on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I marvel, and if I plow old ground that y'all may have covered yesterday morning or this one, just tell me and I'll pivot to somewhere else.
No, not at all.
And yeah, so many moving parts to all of this. The things that stand out to me, they're the first. Well, I'm sure you've had Final Fours that do not have a McDonald's All-American in the fold.
Yeah.
I mean, 4 teams, but this one stands out. But that's not at all to say there were not NBA caliber players, especially UConn.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I read Danny Hurley. Congrats to Coach Hurley. That there's as we've talked about, what a kind of roller coaster emotional life he's had, and it's great to see him, enjoy the fruits of his labor and overcoming some of his own demons. But he said, this was not hard to do. He said, I've got 3 NBA players, and we put the other pieces together around them. And then he also observed before the game, in the days leading up to the championship game last night, that San Diego State was older as a group than, I think, 5 NBA teams. How is that possible? Well, older, or they've been playing longer at that level.
Right.
Like, can you fact check me on that, Matt?
No, I'm sorry, Doug. We talked about that stat, Doug. I think yesterday about that.
Yeah, that's the stuff Doug had given us. Yeah.
And I think you gave that to Rob, and Rob had mentioned on the broadcast.
Yeah.
And it just makes sense where we're going moving forward with this tournament. To combat the one and dones, you have the graduate transfer, right? Or now the transfer, whatever you want to call it. And the construction of some of these teams, if you can get 3 or 4 really good older kids that know how to play and put around them 2 or 3 younger kids that are talented at the NBA level, I think that's the new model. Because, I mean, I don't want to, I can't remember when was the last time Kentucky's model was actually in the Final Four? It's been a while, right?
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. It's such a dilemma that you're not gonna. It sounds so counterintuitive for a coach to say or to tell his fans and boosters, you know what? I'm going to go out. I'm only going to recruit 3 stars,
right,
that I believe have upside. Because then you start losing your fans, as we all know. They hold on every keystroke on their keyboard in mom's basement about who's going to get a 5-star. And that's not just in football. So you got to just pick your spots. I think what you will see, Bruce Pearl has talked about this. It's just not rewarding anymore to recruit that 4 or 5-star high school player. You're going to recruit some, but if he's a 5-star, what is you're probably going to get him 1 year, or at least in his mind, I'm going to play 1 year, and then I'm cashing in on hopefully a lottery pick. And you'll see that with Brandon Miller, I'm sure, this year, and then a bunch of players. Auburn saw it with Jabari and to a lesser extent Kessler a year ago. And so technically, and if I can stick around for John Brady, Rob,
I
want
absolutely
a basketball savant like him. And I don't mean to say Matt's not. Matt's got the IQ as well. What I'm seeing happen and some of it has to do with officiating and just the way the game is played now. These coaches are sick and tired when they try to drive the lane and it's so crowded that they get a charging call, and that the referees seem to lean a little more toward a charge than I remember in the old days. So what are they doing? 4 out and 1 in. You got 4 guys out on the perimeter. Am I right, Matt?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
One guy inside, and these coaches are trying to open up the lane so they can drive it. I saw some of that from UConn, but I think more than anything, UConn's just so mentally tough, and they're talented. And they've got the big guy that can, when you can dominate the paint like he does, it forces that opponent into conflict. But more than anything else, what I saw, the Aztecs, who had the best and most efficient defense since February 1, and that's why they made such a deep run. The problem is, much like Auburn had all year, that's great if you can stop people, but there comes a game where you've got to be able to score in the 70s and even low 80s.
Doug, you're right, because last night my son turned to me, who's I grew up in Iowa, Doug, but raised two kids in Memphis that are Tennessee fans. Go figure. But he said, "Dad, this San Diego State team's a lot like the Vol team. They're really good defensively, efficiently, like you said, but they go through periods where they can't score. They come out of the gate last night. They're 4 of 5. They're up 10-6, and I think Rob, Doug, I think they missed like 12 or 13 of their next field goal attempts. And at that point in time, slowly UConn, the offensive efficiency factor, just dominated. The next thing you know, it goes from 10-6 to 22-12 UConn, and they controlled the game the rest of the way. Now, Doug, what was really interesting, they were down 14-15, maybe even 16. They come back with 5.5 to go. It's 60-55. So the resolve on those guys, those older guys, and Coach Dutcher, who I thought did a wonderful job. In the storyline with Steve Fisher still being in the crowd, I know I saw on Saturday in the win. It's really a neat story because right before COVID, people don't realize this. San Diego State was like 30-31-2, and then they got shut down. And this group has matured, and they fought. And even though UConn was dominant, man, it was 5 minutes ago, there was still a ball game.
Yeah. Yeah. Coach John Brady is on with us right now, roughing it, doing a special research project, covert for the government out in Palm Springs, California. Coach, it got Doug Dean over in Birmingham, Coach Matt Dean, who coached women's basketball for 16 years at Rhodes College and also coached with Herb Hildegren, the Hall of Fame coach at Rhodes with the men. So we're having a lot of fun, but I know you were watching it last night on your special covert operation in Palm Springs, and somebody's got to be there. So let's hear what you got to say.
Well, I'm when I analyze a game, the first thing I look at is the field goal stat, and I just feel like that's the most important stat in college basketball. And most of the time, whoever wins the field goal stat wins the game. And if you look at the field goal stat last night, it was almost 44-37 or somewhat like that. Yeah. And then if you lose the field goal stat, then I immediately go to the free throw line, or I go to offensive rebounds or turnovers that led to easy baskets, second chance points, to see if they have made up the difference in losing the field goal stat. In this particular case, San Diego State didn't do any of the above. They didn't beat them off the line. Offensive rebounds were 12-10. There was no significant number to make up for losing the field goal stat. So that's why you had the separation of the score. And I think San Diego State had an opportunity the first half, but missed, 10 or 11 shots around the goal. The coach admitted their length bothered them around the basket.
Yeah.
And, I've always said you don't coach length, you recruit it. And UConn probably, to me, outside of the Carolina dominance in maybe 2009, it was the most dominant run to a championship in NCAA history.
Yeah.
Coach Doug Dean, great to be on the show with you, and I admired your work every stop you've been, Coach. Sanford, especially since I'm in Birmingham, and you had a nice run at LSU. But before you joined us on the show, I was opining, and I'd like to get an actual former SEC ball coach to tell me where I'm wrong on this, that what I see shifting a great deal in the game, I'm not sure I altogether like it because I'm more of I'm a little longer in the tooth, and I appreciate basketball the way it was played, 15, 20 years ago. But I think some of the coaches are frustrated with charging calls when you're trying to switch, and in the paint especially, that they are going to 4 guys outside and 1 in the paint a lot. And they're trying to force defenses to clear out the lane so they can get their guards can drive and balance out the scoring instead of purely shooting from the 3. I'm probably oversimplifying it, but do you see some of that major shift in paradigms about how coaches want to deploy offensively, Coach Brady?
Coach, hold that thought before you answer, because we're going to go to a quick break because that's a great question. I don't want you to have to get started. We're going to be right back. Hey, rumbleboxinggym.com/Midtown Memphis opens Monday, April 17th. We're going to talk about it. We got Coach Brady, Coach Dean, Doug Dean, all right after this. Basketball the day after.
Hey y'all, it's Ainsley from Hewlett & Dunn, just coming to let you know about our new collection of boots. It's going to be our dress boots. They're the Horsepower collection, and they're genuine exotic leathers and really comfortable. Comes in all different sizes and patterns, so come check them out.
Hi, I'm Eleanor Maynard, a fourth-generation residential broker with Hobbs & Realtors. Inventory is still a record low in Memphis, and the demand for more supply is continuing to spread across the Mid-South. Rates are starting to stabilize, which means the number of buyers is picking up daily. If you are interested in taking advantage of today's market, please give me, Eleanor Maynard, your Sidelines Live residential specialist, a call today, and let's discuss your needs. 901-761-1622 or directly on my mobile, 901-219-1905. That's 219-1905.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Coach, it was a great question, and before the break from Doug Dean, and love to hear this answer. This is going to be really good.
Well, I don't know if the charging call has had anything to do with the way coaches have changed their offensive approach. I think more so the rules have probably made coaches change a little bit. You know, I've always thought, you know, and you can tell how old-timey I am, I always thought that ball movement and player movement has been affected by the closely guarded call. If you get a dominant point guard now, and you have some guys who can screen and pop and pick and pop and do all those things that everybody's doing now, it puts the defense at a disadvantage. And I think without the closely guarded call, the ball movement and player movement has become somewhat stagnant in most people's offense. Now, I will give it to UConn and San Diego State to a degree, but UConn ran some really nice stuff that I saw. But I don't know if the charge call, but hell, the block charge call has been a problem since I was a high school coach. I mean, it's always been something. And I think it may be a little bit more controversial now because of the athleticism of the teams that are on the floor. And I don't really know the answer for that. But I'm not sure if coaches are spreading the floor more because of the block charge. I do think they're spreading the floor more because you get a point guard and you can dominate. There's no limitations on time you can dribble or drive the ball to the goal. And I think that's influenced their offensive thoughts more so than maybe avoiding a block charge call.
Coach, let me make a follow-up question that's not entirely related, but I'm fascinated by it. When you take Alabama, and there's certainly some other teams that really put up an above-average number of attempts from the outside arc, and Coach Oates has, been unapologetic about how powerful that can be, as we saw by Alabama just rolling to a regular season title and SEC tournament title. But my question has to do with the discomfort that March Madness brings, because you're never at home. You're in an unusual, weird arena. Depth perception is different. In Houston, we saw that, the court is raised up. I don't know if that affects shooters. I wouldn't be surprised if it did. But is it hazardous if your goal is to try to make a Final Four run or more like UConn? Is it hazardous to over-rely on the three-point shot?
Well, we've talked about this on this show before. I don't believe you can base your success of your team on shooting the ball. I think it's too fragile, particularly as you just stated. you're right on point. You've got to win on the road, or at least in neutral environments, to win a national championship. You have to string together 4 or 5 games in a row. And if you're relying on shooting the ball, if that's your go-to, I think you run a more of a risk than you do if you're like San Diego State or UConn, where you rebound that ball and you defend it every possession and you control it by how you defend it and rebound it. And you know, if I recall, Alabama went 3 for 27. I think each coach has got to coach it the way they feel comfortable doing it. Nate Oates feels comfortable doing that. But if I miss 17 threes in a row, I'm calling timeout and we're going to throw the ball inside. That's just the way I am. And I'm not critical. I'm just saying it's different flavors for different coaches, and you've got to pick the flavor you want to live and die by. Nate Oates has done that, and he's been successful with it.
And half the time, it's all about looking at your roster and who do you have to work with from a talent standpoint.
Well, you know, Nate Oates recruits shooters. I asked him when they annihilated LSU by 49 in Tuscaloosa. I asked him that night. They made like 23s or some crazy number. I asked him if he was in charge of shooting, and he said, "No, I recruit shooters." And there you have it. It's a simple answer. They look for guys who can make baskets. They'll teach them how to guard and do all those necessary things that you need to do. But it's a philosophy he has, and I've got to give it to him. He can sit there and live with it. Myself, I would struggle with that.
Yeah. Matt, when you're talking about what Coach is saying about the strategy, and those are great questions from Doug. I like that. I don't coach shooters. I recruit them. We can teach them how to guard. Is it similar to that when you coached women? You've coached both men and women.
Yeah, but Coach makes a great point. You know, if you can't make it from the perimeter, you got to have someone you can go down low. And I thought the beauty of UConn, you look at Adama Sonomo and the other kid Klingon together, they had a mixture of perimeter play, excellent guard play. The big shot that Jordan Hawkins hit to go from 5 to 8 was coming off a triple stagger. You know, so Hurley has done a masterful job, and just having that post presence. Coach is right. When it's not going well, man, I was always like, let's get the ball inside. I mean, you got to try to either get to the foul line or make an inside move to get to the rim. And I thought UConn, man, what a dominant run. And Coach, you're right about your analogy going back to the last team to do such a great job in the tournament. They set a record. They averaged 13-point victory margin in all 6 games. No game was under 13. Even though last night with 5 to play, it was a ball game.
The Matt and guys, the mystery to me, Coach Brady, you can take first shot at this, is how in the hell did UConn lose 5 games in January?
I know.
You know,
Who was hurt?
Interesting. I don't know if they had injuries or something happened, but I don't know what they stumped their toe a little bit there. But I thought early on, I saw him play early on TV. Now that's not in presence and sitting there watching him, which is different to me. But I thought they were really, really good in November and December, and then they had a little lull there. And I don't know if something happened to disrail them a little bit, but certainly they got it back at the end. And their combination, I agree, of inside-outside offense, post presence, defensively, they're really, really good, and they rebound the ball. And, you know, I think last night, 10 turnovers in a game like that, or 11 or whatever it was, those are great numbers to have. And they just played winning basketball down the stretch.
Oh, and by the way, Rob, which I mean it completely as a compliment in this sensitive, woke age, you have to preface everything that way. But Clark, the Iowa shooter, Auburn, if you put her on Auburn's men's team and let her take about 7 or 8 threes, Auburn wins about 5 more games. Am I right?
Yeah. I mean, where is she from? Does anybody? I mean, that kid.
West Dowling High School in Des Moines, Iowa.
Wow. I mean, she's tough. Coach, we've been talking a lot before you came on about the women's national championship as well as the men's. And, you know, the only thing that I mean, sportsmanship is everything to me. I mean, and you know, but people get excited and all. I get all that. But, you know, Iowa, and LSU. That was a great game. And here it is, 2 days, 3 days. People are still talking about it. I don't know. I'm sure you know Kim Mulkey because coaches, it's a tight-knit fraternity. She's won, and Matt talked about it, and so has Doug, everywhere she's ever been. Again, success is a choice as well as decline is a choice.
You're talking about the incident of those two young ladies,
after the game, but I'm just talking about the overall with Kim. But what would you have done had you? I
think we've slipped in letting a lot of things pass, and we justify it now by saying, well, she did it to her, but I raised two daughters. They're 32 and 28, and just because their friends did something stupid, I didn't allow my daughters to do something that was inappropriate. And I think both girls were wrong in how they handled whatever this success they were feeling at the moment. And I don't think that's a part of what you need to do to, I don't know, make fun of, ridicule, or whatever the case may be at any point of any game, regardless of the score. And I think part of, teaching young people what they're supposed to do, winning and in losing, you should react in an appropriate way. And I don't think either girl was appropriate in what they did. And I don't think it's any excuse to say, well, she did it to her, so we can do it to them. That's a road that I don't want to even go down. So, but Kim Mulkey now is probably as good a basketball coach on either side, men or women, and she can get girls to play. And they like her. Some girls, Mulkey's a load for some young ladies, but for this particular group, they were talented and she coached them well. And I will say this, with what they have at LSU, she'll win another one in the next 2 to 3, 4 years. She's going to win another national championship at LSU. There's no doubt in my mind.
Coach, is she, comparisons always limp and they're never perfect, but in terms of temperament, toughness, there's a flamboyance to Coach Mulkey. Is she the closest we've got in the modern era to Pat Summitt with the upside that she may have?
Well, she's a little more demonstrative than Pat Summitt. I mean, Pat was kind of cool over there and would sit there, and she'd get upset occasionally, but Kim takes it to another level. I was on a radio show in Baton Rouge yesterday, and I said, my biggest problem, the mistake I made, I couldn't win a national championship because I didn't wear enough bling. I didn't have enough clothes to wear to make myself get over the hump, so to speak. But, Kim does it all. She dresses, flashy. She draws attention to herself, her program, her players. She defends her players, sometimes maybe overboard a little bit. But certainly winning a national championship, you can't argue with that success, and she's going to win another one. Trust me.
Yeah. And I think the four of us, I have 3 daughters as well, Coach, and we've done our best to raise them to be kind and respectful. It's fine to have competitive fire. I think that's useful in life, but that doesn't require you to taunt. And the reason I thought that it was a bad move by both players, as you said, is if you're going to have a rule in game, that was something like that probably almost certainly would be called a technical, wouldn't it, Coach? Then post game, you should be careful about, just because there's not a whistle to blow doesn't entitle you to cross the line.
Yeah, those types of things are discretion of the officials during the course of a game, but then it goes back to the head coach. What are they going to accept? What are they not going to accept? What are they going to defend or not defend? I just thought both players, it was inappropriate to do whatever they did, regardless of who it was against, at whether you're winning or losing the game. I think there's a certain way to conduct yourself, and I didn't agree with either girl in their approach to showing their emotion or feeling what they were feeling at that particular time.
Matt, I know you got to get going, but your comments on that, I like what Coach said, but you've coached, both men and women.
Hey, I agree, Coach. The one thing, I didn't have a problem with some of that, but my problem, Coach, was you probably didn't see the post-game interview where the player took it back on the stage with ESPN and was saying, how Iowa disrespected LSU in essence and how they triangle and two South Carolina. My thing was, hey, that's a scouting report situation, and we did you a favor. I'm a native Iowan. If Iowa doesn't beat South Carolina, LSU's not going to win a national championship because South Carolina beat them by 25 earlier in the year, and the matchup was much different. So, hey, LSU won. They played an outstanding game. I'm happy for them. Kim Mulkey is one of the best coaches. She's on my Mount Rushmore. But at the end of the day, there's going to be some of that stuff on the floor. And as a coach, you just try to hope that your team can rise above those situations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you know what? The interest and all of us are talking about it. I've got 2 boys, I've got 2 girls, Coach, and I'm the same way as Matt is, as Doug is. Sportsmanship, and I like both of y'all as coaches. Y'all stand for the right things. That's bottom line. That's critically important. And I got an interesting comment from one of our listeners just now, and he said, evaluation of players is just as important as day-to-day coaching, as evidenced by what Kim Mulkey did, and coaches like Danny Hurley. And I think what's really sad is that it's over. These basketball, we're done with the men's and the women's Final Four, but I think that we saw this year probably more than ever in memory the importance of developing a team, Coach. And I think you would say when your best teams you've ever had, they'd been together for more than 1 year, hadn't they?
Yeah, at least one. The best teams that I've had, and I think I've said this before. I think the coaches now that can put together close-knit teams in a shorter period of time because of the transfer portal, NIL, and the changing of rosters. I think the coach that can put together a team in 3 or 4 months now and get them to play at a championship level are going to have the advantage. Some coaches can do that. Some have a knack for it. Maybe some don't, but we'll see. But I think that's the landscape now, and I don't see it changing in the near future.
Coach, would you and Bruce Pearl commented on this. If you missed it, it easily found in when you have 3 or 4 minutes later after the show. But Bruce, and it sounds controversial, but there's some factual basis to it, that the nature of the total unbridled free agency with the transfer portal now, and if we're honest, players probably have a way of finding out that there's going to be X amount of NIL involved if they transfer. I don't know how you can enforce that easily. But my question is there an argument to be made in the era of all of those dynamics plus the one and done factor when you sign a 5-star out of high school, that you just forego the majority of that high school recruiting and you dip into the portal if you're a big name program like LSU, Auburn, most of the SEC, and you go get guys that somebody else has made the investment to develop them, put 20 pounds on them, and teach them how to compete and play in a big time league like the SEC. How would you go about roster management in that regard?
That's a good question. I do think there is room for freshmen to play. If you look at some of these teams that went deep in the tournament, they had some freshman starters. So there are freshmen out there that can play. And I think if I was doing it again, I would use both of them to my advantage. I would get some freshmen that I think were good enough to play. I had some success with freshmen. Glenn Davis was freshman of the year in the SEC. Brandon Bass, freshman of the year. Torres Bright was freshman of the year. I had some guys, freshmen, that could play and compete at the highest level. And I think with the portal, you can combine some of that, get some experience, get some guys who want a fresh start, and also bring some freshmen in and not just go wholesale portal with 9 new players or 6, 7 new players every year. I think some stability, if you can do it with freshmen for at least 2 years, gives you an idea of what you have coming back.
Hold those thoughts, guys. We're going to take a quick break. I want to get into this because this is a great topic. More in just a second, right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Throw it back to you, Coach. What you're talking about, roster management and the portal, and then you throw in NIL, how that can attract people in there. Is it harder being a coach today than, well, I guess a lot of coaches, the money's great, but with NIL and all like that, is it more difficult to actually coach versus having to do a lot of stuff, or do you just hire more people around you?
Well, I think all of the above is what coaches have done. I mean, the staff at LSU looks like we're traveling a small army now. We have 7 or 8, 9 guys that are all somewhat coaching to a degree. A couple of guys just handle the transfer portal and see who's available and who's rumored to leave, and they're looking at tape of players on other teams with 8 and 10 games left in the season. So it's a different dynamic. It's a different challenge. I was more comfortable in the older way. I'd have to really adjust to a roster changing, almost every year. So I give my hat off to these coaches today and how they manage a roster. You never know if your best player is going to transfer or not, and that's a scary thing to me. And we fought the draft a little bit when I was at LSU. My last 4 years there, we had 4 straight players go early to the pros, which is difficult enough. But now, not only could you have 1 or 2, you could have 3 or 4 guys just bail on you and catch you a little bit by surprise. So it's a challenge today, and I respect coaches that do it and do it well.
Yeah. Doug, I like those questions that you've been asking about roster management and how hard it is. And can you imagine, you name me a coach out there that doesn't watch the crawl underneath on ESPN or Fox or whatever to see who's going. Look, Doug, think about Auburn. Chance Westry and Johan Traore already gone, and Wendell Green Jr. going to the draft.
Yeah, I was going to ask Coach Brady, when I'm sure when you signed freshmen and you described that you like a blend of, if you were coaching today, you'd want a blend of some freshmen that can contribute and some experience you get out of the portal. But when you sign a freshman, would it be your thought process, and you can't control it exactly, but other than, communicating in the recruiting process, would it be your hope that you're going to at least get 2 years out of these freshmen coming in?
Yeah, I think the practice and the workouts, all that would settle all of that. If he's good enough, he would start. If he's not, he waits his turn a little bit. If there's such a thing today as waiting your turn. But I think I'd let just the practice and the play, stabilize that. You'll be able to tell, and the players know who the best players are throughout the course of the workouts and the practice and the games. And I just let that play out and see what happens.
Coach, I have to ask you, and might get you in some trouble, but you're a big guy. How do you explain a powerhouse tradition like the Kentucky Wildcats seeming to, and despite it's not a lack of talent, we know that, but how do you explain the lack of deeper runs in recent years with the Wildcats?
Well, I don't think they've had the great guards that they had. The last 2 or 3 years, they've had good guards, not great guards, and I think that's hurt them a little bit, especially on continuity of offense. People have been criticizing Calipari's old-timey offense or whatever that unfair, ridiculous criticism is by somebody who can't coach. But I think the flow of his team offensively He hadn't had great point guards, and you look at some of the guards he's had, they're unbelievable in the success they're having in the NBA. So I think that's the biggest thing. And then sometimes I think we mistake tremendous athleticism for really good basketball players. And I think there's a real difference there. And I think, as you've seen in the NCAA tournament, there are a lot of good players that are less athletic and less skilled than some others, but they have success because they understand how to really play the game and they can make open shots. And I think, again, I go back to, I think there's a combination of that with championship teams. You need skilled players, you need athleticism, and I think you have to recruit that and put the team together, that can fill in the weaknesses of what some other players may not have or possess. And I think Kentucky hasn't done that in the last 3 or 4 years.
That and parity, I guess. We might be entering an era, there's some evidence of it, where the term blue blood program is approaching being meaningless because of like what you saw with this March Madness.
I agree. I think if I was a mid-major athletic director, I'd call Dusty May and go spend about a week with him and say, how are you doing what you're doing? I need to take that blueprint maybe back to my school and see if we can implement your thought process and what you're trying to do there, so we can maybe have an opportunity to win a game or two in the NCAA as well.
Good gentlemen, I'll get out of your way, but Coach, it's a real honor to be able to interact with you. And
always.
Hey, look, that great stuff. Thanks so much, Doug Dean, AU Dose, and let's do it again this week. Doug, have you back on? Coach, when you look at it, at the picture of what is happening, you just said it. Go to the mid majors. This year we went to 300 from 351 to 363 schools were eligible to make the March Madness tournament, and that's just doing nothing but increasing interest in basketball, I think. Florida Atlantic, Bo Carter is on the show with us every week from out in Dallas. He's been around a long time, knows his sports, and he was raving about that Conference USA tournament in Dallas, about Florida Atlantic. Matt Dean was on earlier. One of his former assistants is now the head women's coach at Florida Atlantic. She kept telling Matt, this men's team, they're the real deal. They said, watch out for them. They can flat out play. And so you think about what that's doing for interest. I love, and our friend John Hartwell is now the new AD at ULM. Mid majors, I just love competition. And to me, if you are at a school, whether it be Samford, Louisiana Monroe, or North Carolina, your goals should still all be the same. I mean, to be national champion in everything you do, because it sets a tempo. And I just wonder about Dusty May, who all you think will be coming after him, or will he say, you know what, maybe I stay here. I don't know. They may be expanding their arena down there, but I think Dusty May he's got a hell of a pedigree.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure what jobs are open that he would take right now. I'm not sure how many jobs are still available. That the timing of the thing is a little awkward for him, because a lot of jobs have been filled while he was still playing. So I don't know what is available for him, but I thought he should have been National Coach of the Year. Tang did a great job at K-State. Unbelievable what they achieved this year. But I think for FAU to go to the Final Four and play in that semifinal game and have an opportunity to win it, I thought Dusty May should have been the National Coach of the Year.
Yeah, and again, they have a 3,000-seat arena at Florida Atlantic, and who would have taken those? Yeah, who would have taken those odds? Beginning of the season, that a team from Palm Beach County, Florida Atlantic, and a team from Dade County, University of Miami, 2 of the Final 4 would be from down there. I mean, they've certainly got athletes down there, but this has been such a fun tournament, and we've seen teams really rise up. And also, maybe, Coach, do you think we're going to – Doug alluded to it a minute ago, the rosters that Kentucky and John Calipari have been bringing in, loaded with talent. But you talked about not having the guards. And I listened to Jimmy Dykes on ESPN he was the last month of the season. He said, you really need to have good old guards and the importance of good guard play. I go back to what Nate Oates said. I don't coach shooters, I recruit them, but guard play, just like having a quarterback, point guard, whatever. Break that down for us. Why is it so hard nowadays to find the great shooting guards, like a Darnell Valentine? That's still my greatest shooting guard I've ever seen at Kansas. One of my greatest.
I don't know if it's difficult. I just think you need to I think they're out there. I don't know that that game, but I could always find players I thought could help our team, and I think that's the goal with any recruiting class, is to find the players that can help your particular team get better in the areas you think it needs it. And whether it's the portal or going out and recruiting freshmen, whatever the case may be, I think it's important to identify what you need and then find those players and recruit them the best you can. And certainly NIL money makes a difference now, which in most cases, or some cases, if it's managed right, it can be a good thing. But in some cases, if it's not, it can hurt you as well. And I think from LSU fans, from what I hear and what I have followed, just because a guy's in the portal doesn't mean he's a good player, and doesn't mean he's good enough to help you. And sometimes the path of least resistance may be going into the portal, but it can also help you, but it can also, bite you if you're not careful in terms of how you evaluate players coming out of the portal and what are their real reasons for transferring.
Yeah, because, I've almost come to believe that the portal for a lot of guys is, I don't want to quit. I don't want to say I quit or have it be in the local media that I quit. So I go into the portal and you're sort of in purgatory out there. And, the fact that you're in the portal, it suddenly makes you desirable. But 45 or 50% of the guys that go into the transfer portal in football are not ending up getting picked up. So there are thousands who have gone into the portal and we don't know where they are. We're not, but basketball, they're not nearly as many players. I understand that. But, and you just said it, LSU, every school in the conference in the country has to deal with portal management. They have a couple of guys on that staff. All they do is look at guys in the portal. Kim Mulkey did a masterful job, because she have one or two players come back, everybody else was new.
Yeah, she had 9 new players. And, their team, the LSU team in that championship game, we were averaging maybe in the low 60s, and we put 102 up and had a phenomenal shooting night to win the national championship. Yeah. An uncharacteristic shooting night for the LSU women's team. In the first half, I think the player that had 22 points had scored 0 points the 2 games prior to that particular first half that she had. So it all came to a positive head for LSU and their women, particularly on the offensive end that night, how incredible they were.
Well, and I looked down at the men's game, the women's game, 102 in a national championship game for the women. I can't remember that happening. But the men's game, you had 76-59 last night. The deep people talk about, and you as a coach, the one thing a lot of players don't want to do is have to play defense. It's like working on your short putting game if you're a golfer, or just doing wind sprints after practice for an extra 10 minutes. A lot of people just don't like having to do that. But wow, we saw some teams that played some pretty good defense. Danny Hurley, it's in his DNA.
Mm-hmm. Well, his background, it's good to see his dad there and his brother, and the tradition his father has created in Jersey City by being an outstanding coach. But, we've talked about this on your show before. I think a deep run in NCAA tournament, you've got to make some baskets from time to time, but the consistent quotient or consistency I see in some of these teams is they defend it and rebounding, and you don't see scores in the high 80s and occasionally you'll see a low 80s score in the NCAA tournament. Most of the scores are mid to low 70s, and also maybe even in the 60s from time to time. 59 by the championship team last night that got beat. So I think defending and rebounding is still something that needs to be within every team, and to have a deep run into any tournament, particularly the NCAA tournament, I think that's something you have to do on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and it's getting harder and harder. And Coach, we're about to wrap up. I know you've got a lot going on, but I think this basketball season it's been a lot of fun, and you learn a lot. And if you're out there looking at the future of men's basketball, women's basketball, I think it's bright. And there are a few foreign players. There was Golden was from Russia, Florida Atlantic, but other than that, it's an American game. I look in the NBA, and Coach, when you look at the current state of the NBA, and Doug Dean provided us with some pretty cool stats that San Diego State was older, their team, than 5 NBA teams. And by the way, trivia question, who's the all-time assist leader at San Diego State, Coach? Can you Tony Gwynn. Tony Gwynn.
Oh, really?
I thought it was Kawhi Leonard, and then I was like, no, he's a lot taller. He would be the assist leader. He'd be getting the assist. But I just think that this, as far as this season has gone, it has just been incredible. And it's going to keep us talking about basketball more, and love to get you back on more frequently. What do you think will happen before we go to the break and you check out? What do you think is going to be happening at LSU in particular with the portal? How big a change do you see coming?
Well, I think our men's team has to hit in the portal. We signed a couple of players early, but I think the portal recruiting for LSU men's basketball team this spring is going to be critical for the success they may or may not have next fall. And hopefully they hit and get some good players and develop them over the next 3 or 4 months and put a better team on the floor. Because, our basketball coach is surrounded by Kim Mulkey, our football coach, our baseball team's #1. I mean, everybody thinks you ought to win and win now. And that's just the way we are in college athletics. So hopefully he'll be able to do that, and they can put a nice team on the floor next fall.
Who was your coach of the year? Last question in men's basketball.
Dusty May, no question. I mean, I like Tang. He's a good guy, did a marvelous job, as we talked about earlier. Yeah. But Dusty May at FAU to go to the Final Four at that school with the funds they have, incredible coaching job.
I tell you what, man, great, and thanks so much. And how can people follow you? I know I see you on Twitter sometimes, and I have to remind myself what my address is. But you put out a lot of great stuff. But we'll get you back on here again in the next week or so if you can join us, because basketball, it's a year-round sport, just like football. If you want to be good at it, you got to practice it every day. But, man, Coach, cannot thank you enough for taking time to join in from the special covert operation out in Palm Springs. And when are you heading back east?
I'm going to come back Sunday. I got a tea time here in a couple hours, so I got to get moving.
All right. Have a great one, Coach. Thanks so much. Brother. We'll be right back after the break. All right, Billy Roberts checks in with us right now. And Billy, Coach Brady was on with us for a lot of the show today with Matt Dean, Frank Duffy, and Doug Dean talking about the men's and the women's national championships in college basketball. And what a tournament it was. I've never heard so much talk about the women's game. And, really a lot of it's about, we can't be too pithy about Angel Thomas and Caitlin Clark, jawing at each other during a game. I mean, that's competition. My only thing was, hey, shake hands after the game. And
that's the same as a bat flip or somebody spiking a football. It's just showing people up. I mean, is it a little immature? Yeah, but in the heat of competition, whatever. I mean,
look, exactly. And you know what? Those two will probably become friends on social media and do a lot of stuff together. They can turn that into a positive. But but the one thing we know is when Iowa beat South Carolina, and then LSU beat Iowa. Those are the numbers are close to 10 million viewers. And we question was, what if they'd have put that in prime time?
Well, absolutely. And if I'm Nike, I'm signing both those girls up and running a commercial, having them recreate their little spat that they had. I mean, they're going to sell a lot of sneakers from that if somebody could market that the right way.
Could they become bird magic? I mean, think about that. And then think about what Spike Lee did sitting on the sidelines of the New York Knicks games, and Reggie Miller is still doing Wendy's commercials off of Talking Smack. But you know what? There wasn't any fist fighting or anything like that. Kim Mulkey, man.
Well, speaking of Wendy's, they bring Reggie Bush back for a bunch of Wendy's commercials. I'm like, who's his agent? He hasn't been relevant in a long time. I want to know who the hell his agent is that gets him Wendy's commercials. That guy hasn't been talked about in years and years. Now they want to give him back his Heisman and all that stuff. Anyway, I guess everybody can be forgiven if there's enough time, right? I guess.
Yeah. And again, the only other thing was when it was brought up, hey, I think Iowa, Jill Biden was the first lady, was at the game saying, I think it was a great game. I think Iowa should be invited too. Nope. Sorry, First Lady.
Well, that's the residue of the participation trophy.
Exactly. That's what we talked
about. That's the logical extension of the participation. There's no losers. Everybody tried so hard. We need to celebrate everybody. No, there needs to be a reward for winning, period, the end. And the LSU people were rightly offended that she would suggest that they don't get their moment in the spotlight. There's consequences to losing. If you don't like that bad taste in your mouth, come back and win next year. That's what it is about.
I put out on Twitter, hey, only the national champions get invited to the White House.
And sometimes not even then, if they're not politically affiliated.
I mean, and if Iowa wants to go to the White House, win a national championship, and they might do it. That whole team is basically back next year, including Caitlin Clark, who's a native of Des Moines, Iowa. So it'll probably happen. We'll probably see Iowa right back there.
Well, if you don't like it, go. There's a remedy for that. It's called winning the game.
Yeah, but no participation trophies. I mean, again, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. Okay,
we're getting dangerously into grumpy old man territory. We're gonna have to check.
Oh no, we're not yelling at the clouds. Get out of my universe. No, but it's true, and everybody knows better than to think you can be invited to the White House for anything less than a national championship or to ask for money. I mean, that's it. That's the only reason that you go there. But Billy, let's switch gears now, man. College basketball, it's been a hell of a season. I've still got the NBA going on. That goes on into June. We got college baseball, college, football, spring practice underway, softball, gymnastics, equestrian. It's a lot. Spring sports. Frank Duffy was earlier.
The Braves are 4-1.
Yeah. Let's look. What about Atlanta? By the way, Sunday I'm listening to a Cubs game on satellite. And Dansby Swanson gets off to a hot start up there. But like you said, he's probably making $50 million more than the Braves are willing to pay him. But college baseball, the SEC. What a sausage grinder. Look at the West. You got LSU and Arkansas on top. Auburn, A&M, Alabama, all at like 3-6. And then you've got Ole Miss and Mississippi State at 1-8 each. Look over to the East. Vanderbilt, undefeated, as Sonny said, down at Alex's Tavern.
Yeah, and Dansby's a Vanderbilt alum, so it proves the quality of SEC baseball has never been better. I mean, the Braves have got 3 starters on their team that are Vanderbilt grads. I mean, that's just one team. So, I mean, the SEC is loaded and has been for a while. Yeah.
And Billy, you remember, and I remember watching the farm systems, AA, single A, AA, AAA. Guys would go there and think they'd stay forever. Some of them made it quickly. But now when they're going to college for 3 years, even if they go to the minors, which they typically do, their stay is very short-lived because they're better prepared from the coaching that they receive. That is why the SEC gets stronger with every recruiting class.
Well, no doubt. In particular, let's just take pitching. If you're going to evaluate an 18-year-old high school pitcher, some of that is something the guy's throwing in the upper 90s in high school before he's physically developed. You can project that guy, right? But if you look at college pitchers that are throwing in the upper 90s and they're fully filled out and they're more physically mature, I think it's easier to predict what they're going to be. And maybe they've had time to develop a secondary or even a third pitch that they can command. So if you're a scout, it just makes it easier to, assess a college pitcher. And I mean, these guys are getting high draft picks and, even if they're going to go to AA, they're going to get a $4 million, bonus, slot bonus if they're drafted high enough in the baseball draft. So there's real money that's on the line. You better be right in your assessment. And I think there's just less risk to pick a guy that's a college pitcher right now than a high school pitcher, with the rare exception of a high school kid that can throw 97 miles an hour. And there are a couple of those, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But they're still a beanpole. They need to put on 30 pounds and, you don't know if their arm's going to hold up or not. They're a little more of a commodity that's a known entity as a college pitcher. Plus they've faced better competition. They've played in meaningful games, like a College World Series, just everything that goes with it. If I'm a scout in pro baseball, I'm gonna probably look real seriously at the college pitchers before I burn a $4 million slot, a bonus on somebody who's 16, 17 years old.
Well, we've talked about this too. Dr. James Andrews and Coach Butch Thompson at Auburn said it. The elbow is designed to throw about 90 miles an hour. Once you start getting above that in the mid and upper 90s and 100 plus, which some of these pitchers can do, how are you going to keep that going? I mean, that is that your body can only take so much. And that's why they look at these pitchers to make sure they're not all burned out by the time they get to college, because we all know about the travel ball when these kids are young, but it seems like it starts a lot earlier now than it did years ago, 20, 30 years ago.
And you're exactly. And the analog is the way we treat college running backs now. We don't have these guys running for 4,500 yards in college and, burning them up. Typically those guys play a season or two. And if they have a season where they rush for 900 yards, 1,000 yards, they're going to go to the pros immediately because they still have some tread on the tire and they still have some value in the NFL draft. But I mean, I'm sure NFL scouts are like, this Wisconsin running back, and I picked them because they always have these guys that played for 5 years and they got 5,000 yards and 100 touchdowns, but they're probably used up by the time they get to the pros or close to it, I would think.
Well, that's a good point. Also, I would think that if you hold the all-time leading rusher record at your respective school, it's probably safe, because somebody's staying 4 years like Bo Jackson or 3 years like, well, Herschel, you have to stay at least 3. But it's hard in today's world. I think that the paradigm shift in how we draft running backs, I'm speaking of the NFL, goes back to Trent Richardson out of Escambia County High School who played at Alabama, 09, 10, and 11. He, in April of 2012, was the number 4 pick overall. Not that he's not a good player, but you're not seeing running backs drafted high like that. What about Bjorn Robinson at Texas? He's going to be a high draft pick. I think I just butchered his name. Excuse me. But there's a lot of players like that. You're right, Billy. we're starting to. It's almost. It is not almost. It is a running back by committee. Almost like back. Look at those running backs that played in the Wishbone. They had great pro careers because they weren't getting the ball on every carry. You get a classic I formation running back, and today you're giving him 35 or 40 carries a game. Look at Trey Mason for Auburn, left after 2013 season, 11, 12, 13. His pro career, was a disappointment. He had a lot of things, but I'm sure what led to his, head problems was a lot of it was the physical beating that you take. That's all.
No doubt.
To carry sometimes. He carried 46 times in December of 2013 when Auburn beat Missouri.
Yeah, and that game was like back and forth. It was absurd, and then he was pretty rugged in the championship game against Florida State. So yeah, and he's not that big a guy,
5'8", 5'9".
Yeah, I mean he was stout. I mean he was not a little skinny dude, but he was not a big guy to take that kind of workload. I'm not going to call it abuse, but workload, that's asking a lot. And you were mentioning Escambia. Isn't that where Emmitt Smith went back in the day?
Yep. It is.
A huge amount of yards in college at Florida, left a year early, if I remember, and then went to the Cowboys, huge amount of yards. I mean, those kind of guys, those all-timers, they don't seem like they exist anymore. And maybe they wouldn't even be given that many carries in today's game like Emmitt Smith got, right?
Yeah, and you think about Trent Richardson in particular as a player, one of the best running backs physically that I've ever seen, and even with that going for him, your body can only take being hit so many times at that level, and he took a Escambia. That's just incredible. Him and Emmitt Smith both played there. But he was not, 6'2", 230 like Bo and Herschel. Marcus Dupree was bigger than that. Yeah. And if you look at the top 10 running backs of all time in the NFL, most of them are 5'9" or lower. I mean, Walter Payton, Emmitt Smith, Barry Sanders, some of these great running backs. Think about it. LaDainian Tomlinson out of TCU. They're not that big, but they're durable, and they take great care of themselves. Billy, I'm looking here now at the draft coming up. I'm shocked that the NFL loves to find these guys that like Will Levis from Kentucky. He is suddenly just everybody's in love with him. And I don't know, did they not watch him play at Kentucky? I mean, he's a hell of a player, and there's all these reasons why, but he's being projected so high over Stetson Bennett. Now, he's not being projected ahead of Bryce Young, but this is why there are NFL teams that are not good every year, because they have people that make dumb decisions. But would you take Will Levis? I know he's got these measurables and all that, but would you take him over Stetson Bennett?
No, and this is we've talked about this before, and the Falcons are Exhibit A about great players in their backyard they refuse to draft, and they'll go to Northeast Idaho State for some guy. And I think it's the ego of the general manager in a lot of these cases. They all have Gil Brandt disease, where they want to pluck some Olympian and turn him into a wide receiver. They all want to do that. They want to find some obscure guy under a rock and him be a star, and then they take the full credit for drafting him. I mean, the Falcons have committed malpractice for years. They've got Athens, Georgia, that's about 48 minutes away from their practice facility in Flowery Branch, and yet they sniff at all the pipeline of players coming out of Georgia, and they better not sleep on it again this year, because I think 15 Georgia players got drafted last year, and probably an equal number this year. And, they're going to get run out of town for real if they don't draft somebody from Georgia, and, in their 7 or 8 draft picks that they have. It's just ridiculous.
Well, speaking of that, I am corresponding with our good friend Lauren Smith and he's going to be on with us Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, live from Augusta, from the Masters, a tradition like no others.
No doubt.
I mean, and so it's funny. I said, no, we're going to be doing StreamYard, Lauren. And he said, well, you're going to have to explain. I love it. His term for himself. I said, Lauren, we will figure that you've done this several times, but Lauren is a smart guy, but ain't nobody better.
No.
And he'll be having lunch with Fern Lundquist. This is going to be a lot of fun for the Masters. But Billy,
well, you and I had a pleasure of going to lunch with Lauren over at the country club in Athens, and he treated us great, and he was a lot of fun. And he's got stories on top of stories on top of stories, and he's just a great guy, a legend for sure. It was a lot of fun to hang out with him.
Yeah, and this will be his 64th consecutive trip to the Masters. And also he's got his new book coming out about the 21 national champion Georgia team. Now he's got to do the 22. I told him last year, I said, Lauren, the way the Dogs are playing, you may have to keep roughing it at Sea Island or St. Simon's, your writers colony where you are down there. But Lauren is just what we love about, because he transcends college football to the Masters. The Masters is the one golf tournament more than any other thing that embodies everything we love about the South, right down to the $1 pimento cheese and egg salad sandwiches. Folks, we're running out of time.
With green wrapping paper, so if somebody does commit the sin of dropping a piece of trash on the ground that's colored green and it doesn't look too bad.
And if they catch you dropping the trash as they're escorting you off the premises, at least it doesn't look so bad.
But they probably take your badge away for the next 5 years. I mean, but nonetheless, the wrapper that the pimento cheese sandwich comes in is a green paper. It's a green paper. I kid you not.
I love it. I mean, that is smart. Okay, Billy, we'll be back on with you again later this week. And let me say this: most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We've got up on the website, sidelines.live, a link on how you can support the people in Wynne, Arkansas, and in Little Rock in Arkansas that got hit by these tornadoes. More bad weather on the way. Pay attention, folks. But remember, we live in the greatest country in the history of the world. I hadn't got a better example than the people that I see every day in Arkansas, in the South, and everywhere. It is we the people. Until then, folks, have a great day. Billy Roberts, Doug Dean, Matt Dean, Coach John Brady, Frank Duffy, all of our guests. We're out of here.